Welcome to Your Home with Team Gale at Caldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage, the show for buyers, sellers, owners, and investors. We're here to give sage real estate advice and take your calls regarding buying, selling, and owning your home. Brought to you by Alpha Mortgage.
Good morning, everybody. Your Home with Team Gale. I'm Tom Gale. Jack Gale is here in the studio with me.
Good morning, everybody.
We're your hosts today with Kathleen Riley, who's the Governmental Affairs Director for the Wilmington Regional Association of Realtors. Good morning, Kathleen.
Morning, Tom.
Kathleen will be discussing how the local, state, and national Realtor Association has and is continuing to protect home ownership. As always, if you have any real estate-related questions, feel free to give us a call here in the studio at 332-6390. If you need immediate assistance from an agent, you can call our team duty agent as well at 910-541-1212. I also have the Facebook lines open, so if you are bashful and don't want to call in on the air, but you do have a question, you can visit our Facebook page as well. So before we get started, I wanted to preface today's topic by saying that realtors as a profession I don't think are as well respected as doctors and teachers and firemen and things like that. But I do think that we provide a very good service not only to our clients but to homeowners and by doing what we hire people like Kathleen to do on our behalf, and that is to protect home ownership. And even if you're somebody that's only a tenant, I assure you that the costs of home ownership, if they increase, are being passed on to you as well. So I kind of want to shine a light on some of the things that we're doing here for you guys and have done in the past. So let's talk about some of the past legislative accomplishments that you've seen, Kathleen. Like, can you give us any examples of the types of things that the Realtors Association is doing to help homeowners?
Well, we can always talk about my favorite topic with it, which is coastal wind insurance.
Well, we don't have 3 hours. So.
Well, I know I'm not going to. People that know me know I get very passionate about this issue. But basically, the Rate Bureau, as you know, works with the Department of Insurance, and those two go through a whole process of deciding where to raise the rates and how much to raise the rates. And coastal North Carolina, especially the 20 coastal counties, have been consistently being hit with increases over and over and over again. And people feel helpless. When you buy a house, you can predict your mortgage and you can predict how much your basic homeowner insurance is going to be and what you have to pay. But you're really at the mercy of the Rate Bureau and the Department of Insurance to determine how much your wind and hail policy is going to cost. So if you buy a house and you budget maybe, $200-300 a month or whatever for that, all of a sudden those rates are doubling or going up 50% or whatever. That's kind of a shock. Mm-hmm. And so instead of paying maybe $2,000, people are paying $3,000 or more for that same house, and it continues to escalate every couple of years that they file for a rate increase. People feel helpless.
Well, and I think that people understand that taxes inevitably go up, insurance rates inevitably go up, and that I think I can understand that happens. But the problem that I have with what happened to coastal North Carolinians a few years ago was the fact that the insurance companies claimed that they needed more money. And so our rates went up drastically, and at the same time, the hazard, which is the not the wind and hail, but just the fire and theft of people in Greensboro and Charlotte, their rates actually went down, and that goes to again the lobbying efforts and where our legislators are. There are more legislators in Charlotte and Raleigh, and so that's why their people got less, and the underrepresented areas of the coast wind up paying more.
Yeah, that has shifted somewhat.
I agree.
Somewhat. And I would always say, why is a fire or theft more expensive on the coast to cover than inland? But it has shifted. I mean, those rates for fire and theft have either stayed the same or slightly decreased as the wind and hail. It's a formula that you can look at. But what really got me is when the increases that took effect back in 2008 and 2009 for the coast were close to 30%. Mm-hmm. Charlotte actually got a decrease of roughly 2%. And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, who gets a decrease in anything in this market, really? And then you go to the NOAA website and you start tracking these storms, and then you get the actuarial data, and you find a tremendous amount of money are paid out on claims, west of 95 inland in the state. And they're hit with hurricanes and storms as well. It just happened the other day. Raleigh was hit.
You go back, I guess it was 1990 or forgetting what it was, about 1980 something, went through Charlotte and really did some serious damage in Charlotte. Didn't touch the coast.
Well, and the Piedmont area, is on clay soil, so that when it does get a lot of water, that water doesn't go anywhere. It really sits. And I remember the mall in Raleigh was flooded out and whatnot as well. Same reason. The other thing, too, is that our building code here on the coast is different. We are built to withstand those higher winds and things like that as well. So we've already taken that into account, like I say, in the house itself with our doors and our shingles and our windows and all those types of things. So not that, we don't ever have any damage, but, it wasn't related to actual claims, I don't think. And certainly that's, I guess, what we've been fighting for. So that's something that we fought for a few years ago, and we're fighting another round again right now. One other more simple topic I think that we can talk about as a legislative success in the past is the transfer tax. Did you want to explain what happened with the transfer tax and what that is? Well,
that was around, was that 06 or 07, I think it was. Transfer taxes are taxes on conveyance of property. And I know NCAR, the North Carolina Association of Realtors, as well as the local realtor associations, fought very hard because that could potentially hurt the market. Anytime you hit a market that's already trying to recover or it's already having problems, it's going to make it harder. And the most important thing is, in the end, the consumer pays.
Sure.
So if you implement a conveyance tax or a tax on property, that's $2,000-$3,000, whatever it is, tax that you have to pay just to sell your home in addition to everything else.
Well, and one thing that I always explain to people when they're asking me if they should buy, especially if they're military or something like that, I always mention that it normally takes about 3 years for you to be able to break even on a house, because you do have fees. You have to pay for the loan application fee and an appraisal and things like that when you purchase the home, and then when you go to sell the home, you have the real estate commissions and things like that as well. So there are fees associated. So it already takes about 3 years for people to break even on a house, and then you have people that are trying to buy a house, fix it up and flip it or whatever. So if they have to pay a transfer tax when they buy it and then pay a transfer tax when they sell it, whatever, then that's that much less.
And then capital gains on top of that.
Exactly. Then that's that much less benefit to them, for our housing market. So that's just it. If there was no, expenses as you were talking about, then that's, okay, one little thing. But when you already have these other things that are already built in, and we have the excise taxes and capital gains and all sorts of other things as well, we don't need to be doubling up on taxes. So I think it was something that we had a good track record as the Realtors Association. I think we kind of led the fight of fighting against all the counties that were trying to implement those. And do you know what our record was, Kathleen, on? I think that we got all but one in the counties that they had put it on their local ballots. So I know that we had a very good track record of helping to again, keep the costs of home ownership, where they need to be. Anyway, those are just kind of a couple of things that we fought for in the past. And then, of course, now we've got a lot of things going through right now. So take your pick, Kathleen. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, insurance, of course, is my favorite topic. I do want the folks to know that there was legislation passed 2 years ago that allowed for public input and public comment. And the Department of Insurance received about 8,000 comments altogether. And relatively speaking, if you look at the population east of 95 that is affected by these rate increases, that's a small number.
It is.
And I think it's important to get this information out that right now in the statutes, it is written that the public has a right to be heard in the rate-making process now. You can email, you can fax, you can go to Raleigh during the public hearings and make public comments. You can be part of the process now.
And these bills are being passed through the different committees at the state level right now. So this is the time to make a difference, is before anything gets passed. Once it gets passed, I think it's harder to make any comments. Right now is the time for people to be proactive and be involved.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, give us a call here at the station at 332-6390.
Yep.
Additionally, right now there's legislation pending as well that's going to make the rate-making process a little more fair. It's going to distribute it a little more by the use of different models showing different impacts. Modeling is something that is forward-thinking, not backward-thinking, and the insurance companies use these models to justify rate increases, and the models always tend to show, quote, everything's going to hit on the coast. Well, that's being looked at now. And the models are going to be more heavily scrutinized, and they're going to be looked at, and they're going to say, look, we need a combination of models. We need to come up with a blended model most conducive to North Carolina based on the history of North Carolina, which is getting done now. And I think that will show a little more that these hurricanes are distributed. And there's tornadoes. Wind and hail is not just a hurricane. There's wind and hail is wind and hail.
And the other western part of the state gets a lot more tornadoes than we do.
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. It would also be interesting, they're looking at a state catastrophic fund where percentage of the funds would go in, the percentage of the insurance rates that you pay will go into a fund for catastrophic events in the state. So there's a lot going on. We'll figure it all out. And don't confuse this with flood insurance. Flood insurance is the national. That's under the federal government.
Yeah, we talked about that for a couple minutes before we actually started the show this morning. And so, go ahead and lay out what's at the state level and what's on the national level.
Well, they're apples and oranges, but they're in the same fruit basket. The National Flood Insurance Program is a program subsidized by the federal government. That has nothing to do with the state legislature or anything like that. And basically, they extended it for 5 years, but the ultimate goal now is to get rid of those subsidies for funding flood insurance. And what makes this so difficult for folks is when you buy a home and you pay X amount of flood insurance, you budget that, you're living within your means, or you may buy a home in a certain area based on that. All of a sudden, you get the rug pulled from under you and saying, you know what, we're not going to fund you anymore. We're going to extend it for 5 years. And in the 5-year period, your rates are going to go up approximately 20%. And a lot of it is based on elevation, and you can, of course, call your insurance agent to get more details. But, in some cases, especially in the beach communities, folks are going to be paying from $5,000 to $10,000 more.
All right, well, we're going to pick this up in just a second. You're listening to Your Home with Team Gale at Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage. All right, we're back. You're listening to Your Home with Team Gale at Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage. If you have any real estate-related questions, feel free to give us a call here at 332-6390. We are here today with Kathleen Riley, who is the Governmental Affairs Director at the Wilmington Regional Association of Realtors, and we're just kind of talking about the things that are in the state legislature right now, kind of going through all the various committees and being battered about. And she was talking earlier about how only 8,000 public comments were made on, was it just specifically insurance, or was it?
Well, there was a public hearing on the proposed rates. At the time, there was a proposed rate increase. And between the time that the rate increases are proposed and actually become filed where they are implemented, there was a public comment period where one could go to Raleigh and they could speak, or they could submit them, fax or email, where the Department of Insurance and the commissioner will look through them and take them into account. A lot of people ask me, do you think it worked? We still got an increase. I'm like, it's hard to tell.
Right.
We still got an increase, but would it have been more? I don't know.
Well, and the bottom line is, we have well over 100,000 people in the Wilmington area alone, and obviously everybody's affected. And that's one thing that we'll back up, since we're talking about insurance, and say is, if you are not aware, pretty much everybody east of I-95 as a rough, ballpark there is going to be paying wind and hail insurance, as well as their hazard insurance. Hazard covers fire and theft. Of course, wind and hail covers, those storms and whatnot. And then we were also just talking right before the break about flood insurance, and not everybody in this area is required to carry flood insurance. Most of the time, if you're out on one of our beaches, you're going to have to carry it. There are some areas that you don't on the beaches, and then some areas inland if it's a low-lying area or close to a waterway of some type, or whatever chances are, you are required to carry it. And those rates, bottom line, are going to get ready to go up, because the National Flood Program has been losing money between Sandy and all the things that have been happening in New Orleans and wherever else. All these flood areas have depleted, and then some the area. So they are trying to make it a break-even program, and so that means that everybody's rates are going to be going up. There are a lot of people.
But it also depends on the federal flood maps, which they reevaluate periodically.
Also true.
And we had a client a couple of years ago that bought a home. It was a new home, wasn't in a floodplain, and when the mortgage company sold the loan to another company, they found out that they, based on the new flood maps, the house was now in a floodplain, so they were required to go out and purchase flood insurance, which they hadn't anticipated prior.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I actually got a call from a woman in New Jersey. She and her husband purchased a piece of property on Pleasure Island, I believe it was Carolina Beach, where they were going to build a nice home. They're getting ready to retire. And basically the lot was not in the flood-prone area, which it is now. So basically it would be too cost prohibitive for her to build on it. She's stuck with the lot. She doesn't know what to do with it. That's sad.
Well, like I say, we could take the entire time talking about wind and hail, which is a state fight, and the flood insurance, which is a national fight. And like I say, the local, state, and national association of realtors are three different entities that are fighting to help homeowners on all three of those levels. It's nice to have somebody looking out for the little guy, because of course the insurance companies, they're required people too. But it's nice to have somebody looking out for the homeowner that's being affected by those policy changes. But let's talk about real quick about some of the other things that are passing through being proposed on the state level. Can you talk about any of the other things that are kind of being?
Well, the budget and the tax reform bill, in the House version, they wanted to cap the mortgage interest deduction and property tax deduction combined to $25,000. The Senate bill, no deduction. So there's a big argument right now, and it's in the paper every day, about restructuring.
And currently, there is no there is a deduction and there's no cap, right? Right
now, you can deduct your mortgage interest and your property tax, local property taxes, all from the state. In the Senate bill, nothing is recognized.
So that'll all go away.
That will all go away, but they're lowering the rate to a flat tax of 5.5%. So if you're in a higher price, one of the reasons for the mortgage interest deduction is to get your price, your taxable income lower. So if they make it a flat 5.5%, they say that you don't have the need for deduction. So they want to get rid of a lot of the deductions. The House bill says we want to keep it up to $25,000. So they supposedly did some kind of research and found that 90% of the people deduct $25,000 or less from their taxes for their mortgage interest combined with the property tax. Which one will win? I don't know. I mean, it's a real battle. I mean, just in the Senate itself, you had Senator Ruccio, who was chair of the finance, just basically resign his spot and saying, so there's disagreement within the Senate.
Right.
And then there's the House bill, and then there's McCrory's bill, an idea what he wants to do. He's a little more aligned with the House bill than the Senate bill.
Well, and I know that you had actually emailed me the three different Senate plans a couple of weeks ago. That's been consolidated into one at this point, or are there still the three different versions?
That's a great question, because there's especially all the fighting that's gone on this week. It's still up in the air. They're still bashing it out up there.
Well, and one thing that the State Association of Realtors, the North Carolina Association of Realtors, has is a website called taxreformfacts.org.
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of keep up with that, you can go to that website and sign up, and they'll be happy to email you and keep you in the loop on what's going on with this, because as Kathleen has just alluded to, it's changing every day.
It is.
So if you are concerned about the taxes that you'll have to pay and whatnot, definitely now is the time to stay very focused on it and talk to your local legislator about what you like or dislike
or
about
email
something.
Them or contact them via fax or whatever.
But that's the reason why we have three different House people in our county and one senator basically just one senator in our county and whatnot, is because they are your representatives. So here in New Hanover County, and of course Brunswick or wherever else you're listening as well. But you have the local representative, and because they only represent a smaller fraction of people, hopefully they'll be the most representative, to your voice in Raleigh. But like I say, the North Carolina Association of Realtors is helping to protect homeowners in several different issues. Is there anything else out there right now that's a hot button?
Well, I think that as far as the real estate market is concerned, we want to be able to preserve the mortgage interest deduction. We want to make insurance affordable. Right now, from all indications from what I've read, the economy is getting a little better and housing is slowly creeping up. And the one thing that we do not want is legislation to impede that. any way possible.
Right. I think
the
we've seen
housing market needs to recover.
over the past 5 or 6 years, we've definitely seen how closely linked the housing market is to the overall economy. Absolutely. And another thing that's being bannered about too is taxes on services is one of the ways that they're going to increase if they're going to be cutting other taxes. And so taxing on services could affect a lot of things regarding, again, the closing process. So if you're all of a sudden going to be taxing a home inspector and an appraiser and all these other people that are part of the closing, again, you're increasing the cost of somebody purchasing that property.
That's right. And the Senate bill wants to expand that. So when you look at the appraiser, the attorney, the realtor, the mortgage, everybody involved, if you start taxing them, everything goes up.
Right.
So the argument now is, well, we're going to lower your overall rate to maybe from what it was to 5.5%. But when you expand the base of what is taxed, it all adds up. And there is another difference between the House and the Senate. The Senate, the tax base is much broader than the House.
Well, it's a very complex issue, and we appreciate you coming in, Kathleen, to kind of try and help everybody digest this. But the bottom line is visit the taxreformfacts.org website. It's set up by the North Carolina Association of Realtors. It'll help to try and break this down for you. We appreciate you tuning in for another episode of Your Home with Team Gale at Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
We're being sponsored by Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage and Alpha Mortgage, and you can visit us on the website at www.teamgale.net. That's TEAMGALE.net. See you all next week.
Have a great week, everybody.